Today I'll show you how to make an elf hat and a Santa hat.
And so for this project, you'll need a doll. You will also need red, green, and white fabric, depending on what hat you're making. With the Santa hat, you'll need red fabric and some sort of fuzz. And with the elf hat, you'll need the white fabric and the green fabric. You'll also need a needle and thread or a sewing machine. You will also need scissors. So to begin, I'm going to start with the Santa hat. And this is some leftover red fabric that I have. So I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to take my doll. Okay. And I'm going to put her head in it and wrap it around. And this fabric that I'm using is kind of stretchy. So even if it doesn't quite fit. And so now I've just kind of gotten a rough estimate on how big her head is with some extra fabric for a seam allowance. And then I want it to go about up here. There. About 15 inches. Around their head's about 12, so that's going to give me quite a bit of seam allowance. Alright. And I am going to cut it out. For those of you who are interested in the measurements of this, I have roughly 15 inches by 9 inches. I'm going to turn it on edge, and this is where my doll's head's going to be, right down here. And I'm just going to cut up off that corner. I'm also going to cut this little corner off, make it a little bit more rounded, just so it matches the other side. So now what you're looking at is kind of like a really bad looking gnome hat. So the first part I'm going to sew is this bottom here. And I'm just going to turn it up. And then just sew all the way along the bottom so we have a nice clean line at the bottom. Alright, bottom's all sewn up. So now what we're going to do is put good side to good side. So that way you have the seam hanging out in the back. I know this fabric is really wrinkly. Okay, so we're going to sew all the way up. Alright, that's all done. Just going to cut off these excess strings real quick. And I'm going to test out the size on my doll real quick. So I'm going to flip it right side out. I think it's going to be big. Yes, this is a big hat. Okay, I'm going to flip it good side in, or whatever. And I'm going to sew along this edge one more time, and I'm going to do it closer in. Alright, so I've gone like almost an inch and a half maybe away from the original seam. And so 15 inches is way too big. That is actually more like it. Oh, man. Okay. So I'm going to flip it right side out again, and cut off all that extra fabric that I didn't need. Right side out. The hat won't stand up on its own, so we're probably gonna have to use a little bit of fuzz or anything. You could ball up a piece of paper towel or toilet paper and stick it in there just to kind of give it a little bit more form. Stick a piece of paper towel in there to give it a little bit more form. Like I said, you could leave this like a gnome hat. I'm going to take some of my fuzz that I got here. I'm going to cut a strip off about an inch. And all I'm going to do is sew the fuzzy portion to the bottom of my hat all the way around. My sewing machine does not like the fuzz. It is too thick, so I'm sewing it by hand. Make sure the hat fits still. And I think I'm going to take the stuffing out. Maybe I'll just leave a little bit up at the top. Alright. And so now, just need to sew a little ball of fur at the end. You could also use a pom-pom for this, but I have lots of fur. I'm going to use it. Alright, and the Santa hat's finished. Santa hat. Bing. Her head's on backwards. Creepy. The mistletoe. Alright, to do the elf hat fabric, and mine has actually got gold dots on it. I didn't have any plain green fabric. C'est la vie. And I'm going to take my doll. Put the hat over there. I'm going to do the same thing that I did the first time around. So I'm just going to measure it out, cut it out, sew it, and then I'll get back to you. The hat fit right the first time. Now, next part of this, our white fabric. Cut off so I've got a long strip to make sure that's actually long enough. Perfecto. Now, if I just happen to use like an old sheet, and so I have one side that's hemmed already. So on a zigzag pattern on here, and so I'm going to start. We'll start just by folding over one side and sewing it down. And I know I should probably change my thread over, but I'm still going to use red thread because I'm lazy. Now that I have finished making a zigzag topper, I'm going to go around and sew this to the top of the hat. I'm going to follow along with the stitching that I've made already as closely as possible. So my sewing machine decided to be a pain in the butt, so I'm going to be sewing this on by hand, and I'm just sewing it around the edge of the hat. Alright, the elf hat is finished now. Let's try it on. And the finished product, the elf hat and the Santa hat. And you could vary these in tons of different fun ways. So I hope you all have a happy holidays. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Love hearing from you.